Hello, San Francisco, and welcome once again to the Angelic Troublemakers. I'm your host, Alan Jones, and on today's program, is this the real San Francisco? I'm bringing you this program today because I just came off a 7-day hunger strike at City Hall. And for those who know me and how much I love to eat, if you don't believe that I went on a 7-day hunger strike, I don't blame you because I don't believe it either. But I did. But I learned an awful lot of interesting things, and some of them were quite um, troubling, and but some were, I would say, funny. I'm going to start with a slide presentation. Well, I'm going to talk through my slide presentation of what I did from November 21st to November 27th, which was the days that I had my hunger strike, and we'll be describing, my experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's get started with this first video. This first slide. On November 21st, I began my holiday hunger strike in protest of San Francisco City Hall's treatment of San Francisco blacks for too long and how it is negatively impacting our neighbor Oakland. That is the message that I sent to uh, the press. It had the holiday hunger strike on the side of my truck where I was sleeping in front of City Hall. And if you notice, in at day two, which is the next picture down, it says, when it comes to racism, Trump can take classes at City Hall, San Francisco. Honest. This uh, sign said San Francisco City Hall is a terrible neighbor to our Oakland black community. A world class city helps its neighbors. It does not help itself to its neighbors' jewels. That is in reference to how the city of San Francisco conspired with its associates in bringing the Golden State Warriors to San Francisco in their more than half built Chase Center arena. When I woke up on day two of my hunger strike, this is what I saw. In this picture was people, some church group, setting up a feast for the homeless at Civic Center. Now, I need to mention that there's parking restrictions from 2 to 6 a.m. All around City Hall. So I had to move away from City Hall, and so I parked at the main library. But when I woke up this morning, it was rather funny that I saw the homeless getting a feast right uh, near where I was parked. But then it got even funnier. In this uh, picture, actually, this one shows it better. Uh, this lovely group set up donuts and coffee right next to my truck for the homeless on that same morning. I thought it was rather cute that this was all happening when I was starving to death, and those donuts looked better than donuts usually do, if you can imagine that. But the fact of the matter is um, I saw some interesting actions as the homeless, you know, were being fed and taken care of. This church group, if you notice the little white uh, truck tailgate down, also they had a truckload of packages of items that the volunteers from this organization, which I did not get the name, uh, they cleaned out the whole truck, and their volunteers were passing out little baggies, big baggies, but little packages of things for the homeless to take care of them on this Thanksgiving morning to let them know they were not forgotten. And I thought that was rather nice of this group. To the right, where you notice in the background this almost greenish, yellowish uh, person wearing a windbreaker. In that area, they had laid down some plastic, and this group had a whole bunch of clothing that those who were homeless could pick through to find some clothing. I thought it could have been better organized, but it was still a nice gesture that these people had clothing that they were no longer using, apparently, and they were donating them to the homeless at Civic Center. This is all that I witnessed the second morning, which was Thanksgiving, of my hunger strike. Now, then it got a little interesting. First of all, this is another sign that was by my truck. I placed it there to take a picture of the truck right in front of the doors of City Hall on the Carlton B. Goodlet side of City Hall. Uh, this, though it says day 5, if you notice, I used my tablet and I sent a text to London Breed, San Francisco Board of Supervisors, the Chronicle, the Examiner, ABC News Bay Area, KPIX, KRON, NBC, KTVU, that a black crippled homosexual in day 5 of a holiday hunger strike in protesting San Francisco's racist treatment against San Francisco and Oakland black communities. But let's look at this picture. I skipped one, but I'll go back to it. One night, I was taking a nap. It wasn't night yet. And right behind my truck, this Lexus, and if you notice behind it, there's a Nissan in front of the San Francisco, the big bus, tour bus. And these two vehicles, the Nissan and the Lexus, got into a collision, and the Lexus jumped the curb. And if it wasn't for the fact that it jumped the curb, it probably would have stopped in the rear end of my truck. But the very next day, which was not even 24 hours, it was that evening, but the very next day after 1 a.m., that happened. I'm parked in the very same spot, and these two vehicles, recycling plastics or cardboard truck and a white vehicle, got into a collision. And I thought, well, I get the message here. This is no place to park. This was on the corner of Carlton B. Goodlet and McAllister. Both accidents at that intersection, both, uh, you know, one right after the other on that day. Uh, this, which is from day 3, is when that happened. But if you notice the holiday hunger strike sign below that other issue, I again alerted all members of the media and City Hall that I was on day 3 of my hunger strike. If you notice the sign in my truck window, holiday hunger strike, protesting San Francisco City Hall scandal of covert racism against its black communities and how it is now impacting our neighboring Oakland black communities. Now, when I say covert, it's because a lot of the racist actions that San Francisco is employing, if you will, are so underreported, but still they do this in such secrecy because not everybody goes to City Hall or knows what goes on in City Hall when it comes to people reporting these incidents or across the street in the lawsuits, which are settled in many cases when the Board of Supervisors has to sign off on them. These things happen covertly because, hey, they know it's all hush hush. The media is not going to report on them. They are too busy. As my alerting them every day of my hunger strike, hey, they ignored it. Now, I am suspicious why the media would ignore a hunger strike against racism in San Francisco. But when you look at common sense says a person doesn't just stop eating uh, to draw attention to something that's not happening. Here is another one of the photos from the holiday hunger strike. I believe that was on one day. But then we come to the main part of what I'm discussing today. On the very same day of this hunger strike, I mean the 7th day of this hunger strike, was this Tuesday, November 27th meeting. Now, let me describe what this meeting was. The San Francisco Board of Supervisors held a committee hearing on on September 19th to address the issue of city workers, black workers, being discriminated against in all of city employment. And the testimony, I highly recommend that you search it out on the SFGov TV website, September 19th, dealing with blacks in city workers being discriminated against. And the hour and a half of testimony was really bad on how blacks are being treated. And this is just in city employment. Now, in the private sector, oh, sure, we know that goes on. But the fact that They were addressing city issues. And so it was so overwhelming. The chair of this committee, Supervisor Jane Kim, um, she says, well, we're going to have to hold another meeting. And so she brought it before the full board, which was this particular uh, November 27th meeting. Now, I need to add something. I had alerted the Board of Supervisors to the fact that I was doing a hunger strike in the first week of November. And I thought, well, maybe they'll surprise me and call me when I know that they were not going to surprise me and call me. I just said, maybe I'm wrong. I wasn't wrong. They totally ignored me. And when they did notify me, one of the supervisors, Sandra Fuhrer, who in June, a June rally on the steps of City Hall for the people who were pushing for this hearing, the union SEIU Local 1021, the Service Employees Union for San Francisco, had a rally, and she, along with Supervisor Jane Kim and Supervisor Hillary Ronan, were at the rally and spoke. And Supervisor Sandra Fuhrer said, and I quote, San Francisco is inherently racist. Now, for her to say that on the steps of City Hall is fine and dandy. But you're not fooling me. When you say it on the steps of City Hall, that's fine. How many people really heard that? Just the people gathered outside City Hall. The city of San Francisco didn't hear that. So when you look at this meeting where this hearing was taking place, and the SEIU 1021, they requested that people share their stories. And they were holding a press conference at 12:30 on that day, November 27th, while I was across the street on my hunger strike. Now, don't you think that it's odd that a bunch of black people are holding a rally about racism on the steps of City Hall, and right across the street, a black man has a well-advertised truck that talks about his hunger strike against racism, and nobody noticed? Don't you think that's odd? Well, the reason why it's odd is because San Francisco press thinks so little of blacks, it's not worth covering. And in fact, in this November 27th hearing, which was very ugly, San Francisco Chronicle didn't even bother to show up to cover the event. Now, why would the main newspaper of San Francisco not even show up to do a story on a major issue concerning black people in city employment? It It just doesn't make sense unless you have a low opinion of black people. Now, I will say one thing. Guess who did show up? NBC Bay Area News, KPIX, Channel 7, ABC 7, what other? KTVU. They showed up, but it wasn't for that hearing. They showed up because City Hall, at the same time that black workers were protesting outside at 12:30, they had a event. I don't know who scheduled first, but they had a 12:30 event inside of City Hall, which makes me think maybe because of the fact that it was raining. I don't know. They were indoors commemorating the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Harvey Milk and Mayor George Moscone. And you think that they were talking about Jonestown? No. Now, people don't understand this. And you young people, you really need to not listen to all that people are telling you about San Francisco. Because San Francisco Supervisor Harvey Milk and Mayor George Moscone were not elected on their own efforts. They were elected because of a madman by the name of Reverend Jim Jones, who murdered 900 black San Franciscans before he murdered them all in the Guyana massacre. They were here in San Francisco, or really Eureka, but they were campaigning. In 1975, they campaigned. Their church, if you will, campaigned heavily, going door to door, hundreds of them from this Jim Jones church, to get out the vote for George Moscone. When George Moscone won the election, George Moscone gave Reverend Jim Jones a position in city government. I think it had to do with the head of the Housing Commission or something like that. That was later, because of some other scandal with Jim Jones, he had to have him resign from his post. But the fact of the matter is he did, like all mayors do, recognize who helped get him elected, and he gave him a position. And the following year, or 2 years later, Jim Jones did the same for Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk had run for public office 5 times and lost all 5 elections. I think 4 as supervisor and 1 as an assemblyman, or 3 and 2. I don't remember which. But Harvey Milk had benefited from Jim Jones' followers campaigning heavily to get Harvey Milk elected. And he was elected. So, you're honoring the 2 men who were the biggest benefactors of a man who killed 900 black San Franciscans. But you show no respect to the black people who are currently being disrespected in city government. And that's reprehensible, City Hall and the press. But the fact of the matter is we know how these things go. Black people don't get any respect in San Francisco. But I'm saying that based on what I heard when this 3 p.m. meeting actually started, things are going to change. Now, I need to say something. When this 3 p.m. meeting addressing racism at against black city workers, it was maybe 30 minutes into it. The head of the Department of Human Resources is a woman by the name of Mickey Callahan. Mickey Callahan is key to all that blacks are suffering in the city workforce, because she is the one who is poo-hooing legitimate claims of racism in city employment. And though she may have claimed that there was 700, I don't know what it is, issues that they resolved, the big issues that were on display in this particular hearing, were so egregious that we will get justice. It will all come out. Right now, San Francisco, in their comfort zone of covert racism, think that all of this is kept in City Hall and it will not be revealed. And they are going to try and clean up their act, or City Hall claims that they're going to clean up their act. And they've come up with some of the most ridiculous proposals and initiatives that they've already implemented to rectify this problem. Well, I can tell you, people, none of it is going to work. The reason why none of it is going to work is because San Francisco refuses to apologize first. Now, if you refuse to apologize first, that's a clear indication that all the other stuff is lip service. It's equivalent to just saying, well, let me put it this way. Your speech is going east, meaning out of your mouth, and your feet are going west, meaning your actions. That, I'm telling you, is not how you change a problem. I believe that justice is the necklace that I want bouncing off my chest. And the fact that God sees all of this, and people think, well, God's not going to do anything. Well, I disagree. You can't have such injustice and have a God who loves justice and then nothing changes. It's not like that. And so for people who think that God's not going to do anything, don't be so silly. Just because God works slow according to what we think, he will act. And I say, stay tuned. So until next time, God bless.